So the rain turned to hail today. You can see the size of the hailstones here. Yeah, it came down pretty hard.
Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my Wisteria bonsai. In March of last year, I repotted the Wisteria and I did a very severe root pruning. Let's take a look at the history of the tree. I have a Wisteria from David that's long and whippy and needs pruning back. I think my eventual style for this tree is to have it grow more upright into a kind of like a weeping willow style, and then have those flowers hanging off the branches. That would look really nice. So I'm going to do a fairly hard prune here. I'm going to take it off right here. Just like that. There is a branch on the inside here which I don't want to develop. I want to develop these buds on the outside. So I'm going to prune that off also. Like that. My Wisteria that David gave me is growing really well. You can see it growing up and up and up and up to the ceiling. So it's doing quite well. The cuttings I took of it, the one is still alive. It's got green leaves on it, but it's not real vigorous, so I'm hoping it's growing roots. Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be repotting my Wisteria. This is the very first time I've ever repotted this plant. And I think this is just in garden soil. I don't think it's ever been trained as a bonsai or anything. So I struck some cuttings earlier with this tree and they rooted, but they didn't make it through the first winter. And I think that's because I didn't have this nice glass greenhouse. But this cutting, which I think I struck last year, has survived the winter and is doing quite well. So they do root easily from cuttings. You just got to give them some good winter protection. So I think it'll take a while for me to comb through this root system. It's in garden soil and the roots are very tangled. There's a few trees. I don't know what this tree is here. If it's even... It's not a tree, it's a dead cutting. I have removed all the soil from around the roots and you can see it's quite a wild root system. It's going to take a bit of sorting out, but it's got a good root system, that's for sure. The other cutting didn't have any roots at all. So I'm wondering if maybe I pruned this off the tree in winter and stuck it in the soil, hoping it would root in spring. I'm not sure, but okay, so I'll clean up the soil and then we'll come back and wash the root system on the Wisteria. Into the water, the Wisteria goes. Now I'll get my root rake and just try and clean the soil off the roots. Bit of clay there. So the first root I'm going to prune off is there's a root coming off the trunk and it wraps around the trunk here. That has got to go. It's kind of fused into the trunk here. There's that root. Here's the upper part. I can cut that off like that. If you left that on, it would put a big groove in the trunk and it may never fully fuse and might always be a root kind of wrapped around the trunk. Okay, now I'm looking at the root system, trying to determine where my soil level will be. You can see my trunk goes down. I've got a great big root off here. I've got a couple up here. Some thicker roots down here. If I make this my root or my soil level, you know, I've got nothing on this side. I think the best thing to do is prune off these upper two and use something down lower as the root system. From what I see, yes. So they're coming off, and I'll use the branch pruners for these. So here goes the first one. Like that.
There goes my second one. Like that. I have this little shoot growing beside the trunk here. I don't think I want that either. I don't want a multi-trunk. So I'm taking that off. And then I'll need to clean up all my cuts here. I want the trunk to be a good-looking trunk someday. Taking everything off. Here I go. Like that. Cutting, basically a lot of the root system away. Just trim these back even. So there's what I'm left with. Very basic. If it roots out from here, I'll have a fairly good root system on the go. Here is a look at the amount of roots I took off. Well, basically everything. But yeah, quite a root system it had. So I've reduced it down to just kind of the buttress part of the root system, which, if it roots, will be fantastic. It'll have a nice radial root system going. If it doesn't root, well, I don't have a wisteria then.
I am excited about Wisteria bonsai. When Scott Winnard was over visiting from England, we were taking a walk downtown and we spotted this wisteria and it was just awesome. Let me show you the wisteria.
So the wisteria is located in this garden here, just through the gates here and right over here. Here is the wisteria. So let's go in and take a close look at it. So it's got a really, really cool trunk. You can see the fluting on it, some fusion. Yeah, it's really interesting. Kind of an ugly root there, but yeah, I love that trunk texture. It's almost like a banyan tree. So yeah, that's inspiring.
Here is a look at my wisteria today. As you can see, it survived the severe root pruning, and it did quite well this year. It started off a little slow in spring, but then it gained vigor throughout the summer, and yeah, it grew quite nicely. So I have big plans for this little tree. I'll explain what I'm going to do in the future. My plan is to try and get that nice buttress root base on this wisteria and the fluted trunk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue working on the root base. In spring I'll be repotting it, doing some more root pruning. And once I get a nice radial root structure to it, I'll transfer it to a shallow pot, try and grow the roots out, stretching them out, and try and get that fluted trunk on the wisteria. I think it'll be really exciting to develop it into the future. Ever since Scott and I took that walk uptown and I spotted that wisteria, I just can't get it out of my mind. I'm just excited about growing this wisteria into something really cool. We are back to present day time now, and the buds on the wisteria are swelling and just starting to turn green. There's a close-up there. So I have to decide. I'm going to prune the tree up today, but I also have to decide, should I repot it again? I'm after those really nice roots and the buttress trunk on this wisteria. I'm not so interested in the flowers at the moment. I just want to grow a really cool trunk on the tree. And if it flowers someday in my lifetime, well, that's just an added bonus. Traditionally, wisteria are just shown at bonsai shows when they're in flower. They have those beautiful hanging flowers off the vine. I'm going to try and develop this tree to be beautiful just as the structure of the tree. And as I said, if it flowers someday, that'll just be an added bonus. I'm going to start today by pruning the tree, getting it down more compact in size. And I'm after, a lot of taper in the trunk and character to the branches. So let's have a look at the structure of the tree now. The trunk is on a bit of an angle, and it comes up and you can see it divides. There's a branch off here to the left, a central leader going up the middle, and another branch on the right. And there's a little bit of sub-branching from the last time I pruned it, but not a whole lot. So today I'm going to start by cleaning up this structure. So I'm looking at the tree, and I have a lot of choices here. I've got the trunk dividing into 3. I could, prune out the center leader, have it divide from 1 into 2. Or I could keep it the way it is, have the central leader coming up, and then have these as more kind of side branches. They are kind of like in the one plane from this view. They're not super branches, the position of them. I do have a lot of buds down low on these branches that I could prune the upright, trunks to or branches to. So I think I'll begin there. I'm looking for buds on the outside that'll, cause the tree to fan outwards. So I'm going to start by pruning off this one right here above this outward facing bud. So here I go. Like that. My next branch comes up here, and I have a bud on the outside here, so I'll prune just above that, leaving a bit for dieback, like that. And then my main tall central leader, I think I'll want to leave that a little longer, and I'm going to prune that to here, right here above this bud, like that, taking the top off. On the trunk here, I have a branch that kind of grows in towards the central leader here. I'm going to have to take that out, so I'll remove that branch. It's just too cluttered in that area. I've got a few stubs here that I can clean up, so I'll do that next. I'll come in and prune them back. Trying to make those flush. So after that root pruning, that severe root pruning, the tree grew fairly slowly until kind of mid to late summer, and then it just started to grow like crazy. So it must have grown roots and recovered. So I've got another stub here I can clean up, and one here, and one here. Like that. And then this branch, I want to shorten it. There's a couple of buds here, so I'll prune it back to here. And I think that's got the pruning done. The tree's cleaned up. I will put some cut paste on those wounds just to seal them up. Oh, here comes the rain again. So there is a look at my wisteria now. It's looking much better after it's been cleaned up. Now, the next question is, do I repot it? My goal for this tree is to create a beautiful radial root base and a fluted trunk on the tree. I'm going to have a look at the roots. I can always, if the root system is quite meager, I can always just repot it without doing a lot of root pruning. But usually there's always something you can correct on the roots. There's always one root that's taken off and grown thick compared to the others. So I think it's a good idea to repot it. And, if, as I said, if the root system is quite meager, I'll just, bare root it, repot it without doing a lot of root pruning. So here I go. All right, here I go. I've got to get the tree out of the pot. So I don't think it shouldn't be too hard. It's only been a year. So I'm scared these wisterias, after looking at that initial root system it had on it, the roots were really wild looking. And it's kind of like a sarissa. The roots just go wild on these trees or vines, and I'm just scared that it's, not developing well. So that's the reason I want to repot it today, to make sure those roots are behaving, that they're not going totally wild. I don't know why it's being so tough. There we go. I've got the tree out of the pot. Yeah, there's a good mat of roots on the bottom for sure. So let's start combing out the soil from the roots. I think I'm going to be glad that I did repot this tree. So hopefully this root pruning will be less severe than the first one. The first time I basically cut off almost all the roots and planted it as a cutting. This year I'm hoping there's some good radial roots formed that I can work with. Oh, I hear more thunder. It's one of those days. So you can see how the roots are just wild. Now there's bumps in here which I think are nitrogen fixing nodules on the root system. I'll double check that. I don't think it's anything to worry about, but I will look it up. Make sure it's not like root nematodes or anything like that. Wow, what a wild root system. I can't believe it, in 1 year that it's developed this root system. Hard to believe. So it's quite rare on a wisteria to see a really good root system. And I can see why, because, I think it'll take a lot of frequent repotting to get this root system looking good in the long run. I may have to repot it every year for, quite a few years. Now I know why it was so hard to get out of the pot. It was almost root bound. Okay, I think it's, pretty close to being bare rooted. I am going to wash the roots, so I'll take it over to my washing station, try and get all this soil out and bare root the tree, and then we'll come back and start the root pruning. Here is a close-up of the root system. So you can see all those bumps. You can see where I've pruned some roots off here in the past, and they're healing over really nicely, those scars. So I'm going to go inside and see if that's normal, if they do get those nitrogen fixing nodules on the root system. If it's not normal, well, I'm in big trouble. But if it is normal, that's fine. I went inside and looked up the root system on the wisteria, and that is normal. They have nitrogen fixing nodules on the roots, so that's good. It's starting to rain once again. I made it out here just in time before it starts pouring. So let's have a look at the root system now and begin the root pruning. You can see there's one very large root here coming off to the side that I think I've root pruned once before. I'll start up top here, getting rid of this root that's sticking up, and I'll take off some of these nodules here. Oh, there's the thunder. If we come around here, there's a root sticking straight up. I'll take that off. And you can see I've kind of got sort of a multi-planed root system. I have that large one coming off this side, and then most of my radial roots are down at this level, so I've got to remove that root on this side. So that's a lot of work. I'll cut off the roots that are surrounding that area so I can see it a little more clearly. There you can see where I've cut a root off here before. There's a root that's grown on top of this large root. I'll prune that away. So now you can see that root really clearly there. Really, really thick. So that has to come off. It's just out of proportion with everything. And it's too high. Okay, so big cut coming up here. Here I go. I'm going to come in and just cut through it. All right. I don't think I got all the way through, but there. Okay, that root is now removed. There's what it looks like. Kind of like a ficus root. So let's get this cut cleaned up. And it'll leave quite a big scar here, but again, on the trunk like this, it should heal over eventually. And in a few years, you won't even know it was there. I should be doing this video as an ASMR video. Just the sounds of rain and working away on the tree. It would be very relaxing. Okay, so that's cleaned up. Let's continue with the root pruning now. So there's one sticking straight up here I can remove. There's one here. Here, these are wild roots. Just wild. There's another one sticking up here. That one can go. I'm going to cut away these nodules here. So I can see what's going on. There's some lightning. Followed by thunder. That one off. Okay, so this root here, it's going off on a funny angle. Get rid of that. Crossing all my other roots, these ones too. Trying to keep my best radial roots. So you can see this root is starting to get very heavy. There's too much growth on it, so I've got to cut it back quite severely. There's part of it here that's kind of, the radial direction is here, and this root's kind of on a bit of a funny angle, so I'm going to remove that. There's a root here sticking up. I'm going to get rid of that one. This one also. Trying to get those roots to flow down into the soil. There's a crossing root here. Have I pruned it? No, I haven't. There's a root underneath these two roots that's going off on a funny angle. I'm going to prune that back. This root's fairly radial, but it's getting a little long and off the radial direction. Same with that one. This root, you can see it sticks up. It's not flowing down into the soil, so it's got to be removed. This root's a little deep. Trim the bottom off that. Now this root here, it's starting to be a problem. It's fairly radial, not quite. I'm going to prune this part of it off, the part that sort of deviates from the radial direction. And
maybe even this end here, like that, keeping my radial roots. The root system's a little meager on this side underneath this big thick root, but I think, you know, I'll get roots developing in this area, and there's some below that are a little low, but they'll do for now. Off of here, this root's starting to go. Here's radial, and it's a bit cranked over, so I'm going to reduce it back and trim these back. So this side is still a problem here. It's a very thick root. I've got to prune off the end of it at least. And you can see it's a bit too horizontal. It doesn't flow down into the soil, so I'm going to try a cut like this, taking the top off it. Just clean that up a bit. That will help. That one off. That back. Now this root, here's my radial direction. It's still cranked over. I think I've got to cut it back quite far. And take these ones off. They're not radial. See what happens with that one. There's a root growing straight down. Let's go underneath now. Let me just clean up a bit here and look at the bottom here. So there's one going straight down I can remove. There's one crossing here. This one is starting to go in a non-radial direction, so I'll prune the end of it off. End off there. So I'm just getting the root base flat on the bottom. Okay, that's better. It almost sits flat now. There's something under here. I think it's this root. There's a root here. It's starting to sit quite flat now, so that's looking good. Now, I've still got to do some root detailing here. That one off a little shorter. This one's going a funny direction. This root's a little high here. But I don't know if I have anything better below. There is one here, but it kind of goes too horizontal. That's a difficult decision. Do I keep that or do I get rid of it? I think you can see the flow of the trunk going down and it sticks out, so I think I've got to get rid of it. And this one too. This one on the bottom, I think I've got to get rid of it. It's just growing out the bottom. That's better. Okay, making progress here. Getting pretty close, I think. Yeah. So that's looking pretty good, that root base now. A bit of a bump here I've got to correct. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think I'm ready to plant the tree. Quite a reduction of the root system today, but it's not as severe as last year. I've got a lot of good radial roots on the go, so I'm happy with the root base. I think it's going to develop even better this year, and I'll have to keep up on the pruning. I think I'll have to repot this wisteria every year until I get all those surface roots kind of set, and then I can kind of grow the tree with a little more vigor and, you know, grow it larger in size and try and get that fluted trunk. It'll be exciting developing this tree into the future. The question now is, do I use the same pot? So if I put the tree in the pot, you can see the radial roots are kind of getting close to the edge, and I think as they grow they'll hit the edge of the pot and start growing all down and funny. So I think I need a larger diameter pot to grow this radial root system. So I'll look around and see what I can find. I have found a plastic Chinese pot. I don't know if it's mica or not, but you can see that gives the roots lots of room to grow. So I think that's a good pot. It's got drainage holes in the bottom. So I think that'll be the pot for the wisteria. The only problem with uppotting trees is they start to take more and more space in the greenhouse and your grow benches. But I think it'll be good for the tree getting it in that larger pot and letting those radial roots grow out. I've got a drainage screen from the bottom of the pot, and I'll start adding soil now. Now, unfortunately, I am running out of soil. However, I think the tree is at a good height in the pot, yeah. Right about there. I want my trunk vertical. So I'll fill it in with what soil I have, and I may have to mix some more up today. So here I go. I'll get the soil around the roots. At least I can water it and then mix up some more soil to top it up. Yeah, it's close to having enough, but not quite. So I'll have to mix some more soil up. So I'll give this a water while I'm mixing soil up to keep the roots moist. All right, here I go with the water. That should keep the tree happy until I get some more soil to top up the pot. I have got a new tub of soil mixed up, enough to do the job anyway. I will continue filling in the soil now, filling the pot up just below the lip. I almost had enough soil. It looks like I was about 2 scoops short. So just a little more soil to top that up. I think this wisteria is going to grow very, very well this year. Here is a look at the wisteria now. I'll rotate it around so we can see it from all angles. So I don't even know where the front is, but here is the current front. Coming around to the right-hand side, around to the back, the left-hand side, and back to the front. My wisteria is all repotted and ready to grow for the summer. I'm really glad that I did decide to repot it for the second year in a row. Those roots were turning into a total mess. So I have them sorted out once again, and they're looking really good. I'm happy with the root base on the tree. I think it's going to develop into a fine tree in the future. So that is it for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.